My name is Pablo Larios. I'm international editor at Artforum, based in Berlin.
My name is Ibrahim Mahama. I'm a visual artist from northern Ghana, Tamale to be specific. I studied at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, and I'm an artist mostly just interested in the subjects of history, interrogating it, and finding ways in which we can reconstitute it for public discourse.
The cover work for Artforum's October issue is titled Beasts of No Nation. It brings together wax print, fabric, and jute, materials that trace overlapping colonial and post-industrial economies. Ibrahim, can you tell me about these materials and what they mean to you?
I think my attention to these materials came when I was an art student at Kwame Nkrumah University in Ghana. At the time, we, of course, as part of the curriculum, the new curriculum, we're studying different artists. And Yinka Shunibare was one of the artists that we studied his work extensively. But it was also the interpretation that he brought to these fabrics. That's the wax prints, which were originally inspired from Indonesia, industrially manufactured by the Dutch, which became very popular in West Africa and popularly known as the African print, and looking at the genealogy and also the extent of memory and weight within the history of these fabrics. So, as an artist, I was also interested in it with a certain level of abstraction, with the idea of like acquiring these materials in the market spaces, giving it, exchanging it with local migrant workers, and then taking those fabrics, old fabrics, and then making these abstract forms with them. So the work Beast of No Nations, which is on the cover of Artforum, it's part of an exhibition which happened in Hong Kong a couple of years ago titled Half of a Yellow Sun. And basically the idea was looking at like just the extent of degree of residue within these fabrics and then like how they are connected to like the fabric of the society that we live in. Underneath the beauty of the fabric underlies a deep history of colonialism, which again in Yinka Shonibare's work through like the reference to the French Revolution and then the figures without their heads and all that. I thought that it was actually quite interesting to go back to the subject of freedom and emancipation by using these colorful, beautiful fabrics as a starting point.
It's almost as though you were interested in a certain misconception about these fabrics, and actually you were showing that they were entangled with in a much more complex sort of genealogy. By freedom, do you mean, the freedom to kind of remix or sort of liberate these materials from their initial contexts, or do you mean something else by freedom?
By freedom, I mostly refer to as a new system of redistribution. So understanding where we're coming from and understanding where we need to be or the new futures we need to imagine or create. Sometimes it's very tricky because the wax prints turn to be so beautiful, but we also forget that a lot of the beauty comes from like the history of, let's say, the proverbial symbols and others that were incorporated into it that made these fabrics what they became in terms of the techniques that were developed to be able to establish these fabrics. So when I'm thinking about that freedom, I'm thinking about all these complexities and how, as artists, we can be able to use this to tell new stories.
I think as you were speaking, I thought of two things. One is your institution building in Ghana, which to me seems like a crucial part of your artistic practice. The other is your current show at the Kunsthalle Wien. Also is a show for me about labor. It's about the unseen labor, and it's also about infrastructure. Tell me about the genealogy of your current show at the Kunsthalle Wien.
The Kunsthalle Wien show started about 2 years ago, and I eventually end up with this idea of the train and the headpans. And I thought it was important because this train was originally manufactured in Stuttgart. And it was part of a series of trains that was sent to Africa, the global south, in the post independence period. The subject of labor, even tracing back to the colonial period, I think is something that we really don't think about much in relation to, let's say, the history of, let's say, accumulation of wealth in the West. So I thought all these were encapsulated within these like trains and the question of industrialization and all that. So in the end, the very trains that we showed in Vienna were trains that were being scrapped And then through the budget of the production, we acquired some of these parts of these trains. There were three different parts of trains, and we assembled them together to make one sculpture. And we had to scoop it out because engineering wise and architecture wise, the weight had to be shared. So I like the idea that the pants which are used ordinarily by women to carry things all around the country and all that. The weight of it, all the millions of tons when you put them, 5,000 pounds when you put pants when you put them together, it somehow goes back to the weight, the scooped out inner part of the weight of the train, which allows you to walk into. It's like biblically like looking at the story of Jonah and the whale, you know. So for me, that is important. It's we're dealing with a certain gravity of weight in terms of history, and I somehow want to be able to bring the audience into it, literally and then physically.
Something that distinguishes your work from me is it's equal, I would say, attention to the conditions of labor and of practice and the context of Ghana and the way this is sort of refracted outwardly via your exhibitions that take place outside of Ghana. Tell me a little bit about your institution building in Ghana, because this is such a crucial aspect of your work.
Yes, no, I was just saying that I think it will be very important for us to be able to create artistic conditions that can inspire the imagination of like generations that younger generations and generations that are yet to be born so they can harness a new sense of enthusiasm for the multiple futures that are yet to emerge. I started building the Savannah Center. It was the first space. This was in 2014, and then we've not looked back since then. So that is one. Red Clay, it's a personal studio. The idea was just to open up the studio in such a way that even in the building process of the studio, children can ordinarily just walk in and witness how a space is being built. The idea is that we witness the birth of it. If we could somehow witness the birth of, let's say, stars and universes and galaxies, I think it would really reshape our sense of the appreciation for life in itself.
And you have built three institutions in Tamale.
Yes.
What makes Tamale unique for you? How does it differ from the other contexts in which you were raised and born in?
Tamale, it's quite peaceful and quiet. And also, as an artist growing up in these two major cities, Accra and Kumasi, Tamale seemed a reasonable choice to go back because, again, historically, the north of Ghana has been quite poor. Again, through the colonial period to like in the period of independence, post-independence. And the idea was to find ways in which I could make a significant contribution to a shift in the way people see things there.
So obviously, your institution building involves the work of others and other
Yes.
artists. What advice do you give the artists that you work with or the various people that you're working with for these feats of institution building?
Yeah, I guess for me, I think they always say leadership by example. The point has always been about making things accessible to the general public, regardless of what it takes to make it, how difficult it takes to make it, particularly young people. And I think it's very important because we always have to remind ourselves that what we are producing as artists, we're not just producing it for the traditional art world in terms of like the arts institutions, the collector base, critics, whatever, but we're actually doing it for the world itself.
Ibrahim, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
This was such an inspiring conversation. I really think it's awesome what you've built and what you've and your way of conceiving how one can practice as an artist by building new infrastructures
Yeah.
in places that might need them or might want them or might not know they want them. I'm from a place where there's not a single museum for contemporary art in my hometown. So what you've
Where
done
is that?
and I was born in San Pedro Sula in Honduras,
Ah,
and the only museum there is a children's museum
okay.
and an archaeological museum that is mostly in disrepair. But
Yeah.
there's no museum for art, and what you've done is really inspiring for me. So thank you
No,
for
thank you. I think we need more of that. And I think, again, as I mentioned before, the artists have to realize the responsibility that they bear and then through their actions and all that. Because artists sometimes we have a bit too much in our own heads, always also thinking, oh, someone will do it. No, but sometimes we have to do it. We have to do it. Yeah.